Okay, so lesson number fifth today, which is differences between similar sounding letters. Okay, so sisters, what happens is that from this session, we have already covered this first difference. When we covered this, I think that that was in our first as well as in our second session. So if you missed this point somehow, you can refer back to the recording then. But I will quickly summarize these points as well. What is the difference between this Alif alphabet of English and this Hamza alphabet of English? Right? For the first session, I mentioned that just, remember that they make a kind of a similar voice of, similar to the alphabet A of English, like the A sound, right? Both of these letter, I told you for that, point, for that time, that just remember they are, similar sounding to the A alphabet of English. But then in the second session, we discussed certain differences as well. So again, I will just, kind of summarize those differences today as well. So sisters, this first alphabet, which is Aleph, I mentioned that this is, we cannot just say that this is like a proper alphabet of Arabic, right? Why we cannot say this? Because this is actually a letter of elongation. This just elongates the sound of the letter that comes before it, right? It's just used for the elongation purpose. How? For example, let's take any alphabet, which is, for example, this Kaf alphabet. And what we will do, we will attach this Alif to it. This will be written like this then, like this. Okay, sister, if we join, this is the way how we join the letters in Arabic. Okay, so if we will join this was the Ka sound. Kaf with a fatha on top of it makes a sound of Ka, Ka. And then this is Alif alphabet. I mentioned about this Alif that Alif does not have any symbol. It will not have any fatha or kasra or dhamma or sukoon or any, it will not have any symbol. It is just simple Alif. So when we will, join these two together, that will make a prolonged sound of ka, ka. This was ka, right? Ka plus this Alif sound becomes a prolonged sound of ka, right? So what happens is that you will get this from here, that Alif actually is just a letter of elongation, right? It elongates the sound of the letter that comes before it. So it means that Alif will not come at the start, but rather Alif will either come in the middle or at the end of the word. Okay, so this is what we know of Alif. Whereas what happens with Hamza is that Hamza is a proper alphabet. It is not a letter of elongation. It has a proper sound of its own. It does not elongate the sound of any other letter that comes before it, right? So it will have its own sound, its own voice. It will have a proper clear sound. This is what I mentioned here as well. Proper, clear, sharp sound. Okay, so this is the difference. What happens with Hamza is that Hamza can have, harakas on top of it. It can have a fatha. When Hamza will have a fatha, we will write it, like this, like this. Hamza can have a kasra as well. We will write it like this. Hamza can have a dhamma, then we will write it like this. Okay, let me just hide this bar. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, yes, when it will have a dhamma, we will write it like this. And when sometimes you will find a hamza written like this as well, and sometimes you will find it written like this as well, and sometimes like this as well. So these are all the ways you will find you will find in Quran the way hamza is written. This is not alif, okay? All of these shapes that you see, these are of hamza. So hamza is like this. Okay, so what is the difference between these two? First is about, the first is a letter of elongation, but the second Hamza is actually, a proper letter with a proper sound of its own. The second point I just mentioned is that Alif does not have any symbol, whereas Hamza can have, these symbols of these harakas as well. The third point is a very important point with regards to the articulation of both of these two, right? So the first one, which is Alif, it is, articulated from the empty space in our mouth, right? All the empty space. For alif, our tongue is not involved, neither our teeth are involved, or any other area in our mouth as well. It is just from the empty space in our mouths. So the hamza, whereas, is articulated from the portion of our throat, which is the lower portion, right? So the articulation point is, quite different. One is from the mouth and the second one is from the throat. So obviously there is going to be a difference in their sound as well. But the difference, what happens is that it is very, it is very, when we hear it, we think that, okay, this is very minor. This is very minute difference. We cannot find any difference in that. Let me just give you an example. I just gave you an example of this, here with an example of this ka. So here we have alif, kana in the middle, right? Kana, ka, a. The a sound, just hear the a sound I'm making in between. Ka, kana, kana. So that a sound that comes in the middle for a very, just a short period of time, just for a second, would, or that is of actually the alif. And if we just take the example of this one here, this hamza here, let me just write the example one more time, which is anna, the very clear, very sharp, and very proper sound of a, right? The a sound, a sound is at the start, like anna, anna. Whereas the sound here of alif in this kana was very, soft, was very, just very, what we can say, it was like merged with the previous letter actually. So we cannot hear the proper sound of alif in there, right? So the first sound of is very light, is very, just for a second or two, but the second sound of hamza is actually very proper. We can hear it clearly, right? Anna. Okay, so that is the difference between these two. Okay, I have just tried to summarize the points here. But generally you can say that if we hear very closely, very carefully, then we will get the difference. But if we just read very casually, if you are reciting the Quran very casually, it will be difficult for us to pinpoint where is the hamza and where is the alif then. Okay, so that is the difference between these two letters. Okay, let's move on to the difference between the second similar sounding pair of Arabic alphabets, which is now, Hamza letter, the same Hamza that we discussed in the previous pair as well. Hamza difference with the Ain letter of Arabic. This is Hamza, right? Hamza alphabet, and this is Ain alphabet. Okay, so in both of these, the first difference is that their articulation points are different. This hamza comes from the lower portion of our throat, and we make a sound of a when it has a fatha. When it has a kasra, we'll say e and u, like this. But for ain alphabet, it comes from the middle portion of our throat, right? Middle portion of our throat. And for this ain, what we have to do is that, we have to put a bit effort, right? Uh, in the muscles of the throat. The muscles in the middle portion of our throat, they get constricted, right? They get tightened a bit. And what we do as well, we kind of, push our tongue backwards as well, right? So that we are able to, get the voice of ah, ah, like this, right? I'm just working, and I'm just putting effort in the middle portion of my throat. And what is happening? My tongue is going a bit backwards. I'm pushing my tongue a bit backwards as well, and that is, kind of the mechanism, the way we articulate ain. Okay, so if we put a fatha on the hamza, what sound is there of this one? Ah. Ah, when we are, articulating the hamza, our tongue is in a natural position. It is in the resting position, which is like the natural position. We're not doing anything with the tongue, but rather the sound is just, coming out of our throat, and we just say ah, ah. But for ain, we are working, okay? We're putting effort. We say ah. This is the, kind of choking sound that I mentioned. Ah. The first one is ah. The second one is ah. Ah. Okay, let's take an example. For Hamza, we say anna, anna. But for Ain, we will say anna, anna. Just hear the difference. Let's take another example. The Hamza sound here is ala, 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 right? But for Ain, we have ala, ala, like this. Let's take one more example, which is of this word, sa'ala. Hamza here is in the middle. Sa'ala, sa'ala. But here, the ayn is in middle, and we will say sa'ala, sa'ala, ah. Okay, this is the difference. The first one is ala, the second one ah, ala, like this. Is there any sister who would like to, say these so that I just understand you get the point or not? Any volunteer here? For now, what you can do, sisters, is that just try to create a difference between these two letters here, Hamza and Ain, even if the difference that you are creating is not correct. Okay, even if you say them in an incorrect way, which is not right, but for now, if you're beginners, you can just try to differentiate between these two. What will happen then is that you will put the effort in the procedure, and that is how you will get the exact sound of the letter ain as well. Okay, so that is what I will just tell you for now. The first sound is a sound, just like the A alphabet of English, but the second sound of Ain is not the A of English. This is a different sound, very different sound, and we say ah, ah, like this. Okay, so inshallah, you will practice this and you will get this point as well. So let's move on to the next pair of today. The third pair for today will be the ha letter and ha letter. And again, this is, a kind of a limitation of Zoom as well, that, because we are taking the sessions online and because we are using the Zoom as well, so the recordings and the way you hear via the Zoom is unfortunately not that clear. This is what I've noticed in the recordings as well. Okay, you might not be able to hear the difference properly because of the Zoom sessions. So I will inshallah try to make the clear, loud voice, but let's see what happens inshallah. You can inshallah, that is why I'm just stating the differences in the form of points as well. That is why I am telling you that this is from this portion and this is from this portion of the throat and this part of the mouth and this part of the mouth. Why I am explaining the details so that there isn't any confusion. But if there, right, even if the sound you hear is a little closer, the points that I mention here, I hope that they are those that help you in understanding the difference at least. So yes, let's move on to the third pair for today, which is letter ha and letter ha. Okay, so okay, so what happens, sister, is that just like the Hamza and the Ain example, what I mentioned in that is that the Hamza is kind of the A sound, and the Ain, it is not there in English. For this ha and ha pair, I will again mention that this is kind of like the H sound in English. The first one here is like the when we say, for example, hide in English. Hide, right? Hide. So that is the same H, but this ha is not there in English. Okay. So what happens in this pair, sister, is that their articulation points are again different, and the articulation points are again different. The first ha letter comes from the lower portion of our throat, right? Whereas the second ha comes from the middle portion of our throat. Okay, so what is the difference? Let's take, example first of all. This is, halaka, ha, halaka. This, first ha sound is very clear, is a very heavy sound you can hear. And again, for this ha, you don't put much effort, right? Again, the tongue is in resting position, very normal state, and the voice is just coming from the throat, and you say ha, like when you say hello, right? Ha, halaka, like this. But for the second one here, for ha here, what we do, our tongue again, we push it backwards, just like the way we did in ain. We push the tongue a bit backwards, and what we do in this ha, it is a bit more airy, like the a bit more hollow, airy sound. We push air out of our throat, and we say ha, ha. And for this second ha, I mentioned the procedure, the way in winters, especially in winters, what we do, when we try to push the air out of our throat onto the windows or mirrors, so that the fog gets accumulated on that. So that's the same procedure. What we do is that we make this sound ha, ha, like this. We do this on the mirror, right? So this is very natural. We are all familiar with this. Like almost everyone, might have done this in like one or two times in their lifetime. So what you're supposed to do this, same procedure for the second ha, ha, like this. Okay, so for the first ha, I said that is very simple. For the second, I said that it is a bit more airy, right? So that is the difference. For second ha, let's take an example of this word here, which is halaqa, halaqa, right? So let's take another example of this first ha, which is hassa, hassa, ha sound. For the second, let's take example of this word here, which is Ahmad, Ahmad, like this, right? So the first one here is ha, and the second one here is ha, ha. Okay, for the second one, what we are doing is we are pushing the air out of our throat, and that is how we, create a difference in these two sounds. I think maybe let's take another example, which is here. Let me just encircle this here of the first ha, which is ahla, ahla. Okay, ahlu here, ahlu. Okay, the second example here is ahalla, halla, right? Ahalla. Okay, this is the difference between these two. Okay, so the fourth pair we have today is, okay. The fourth pair today is inshallah, you will find this a bit more easy, I think, inshallah. So this is, ta letter. The first one here is ta letter, and the second one here is pa letter. Pa. So in this pair, the articulation point of both of these two is same now. In the previous three pairs that we have covered so far, the articulation points were different as well. Okay, but for this pair, their articulation point is exactly the same. So you might wonder, and that then what is the difference? Articulation point is same. So where comes the difference then? So the difference is in the quality of these two letters. Okay, in Arabic, what happens is that there is this articulation of letter, and then there is a certain quality, the way a letter is articulated, right? The way a letter is articulated, it can be different as well. Okay, so let me just, make the sound as well, and then you will understand as well. So for these two letters, the difference is in the quality. The first letter here is a light letter. This ta letter is a light letter, and the second letter pa is a heavy letter. Okay, first of all, let me tell you the articulation point of these two letters. What we do is that we take the tip of the tongue and we touch that tip of the tongue to the roots of our, upper front two teeth. Okay, tip of the tongue, it touches the root of our upper front two teeth, like the back part of our upper front two teeth. Okay, and we say ta. The first one is we say ta like this. If you place a fatha on top of it, the sound will be ta. For the second one, if you place a fatha on top of it, that will be pa. Pa. Like I am, just using the same procedure. The tip of the tongue is, there at the roots of my upper front two teeth, but it is a heavy sound and I say pa. The first one is ta, light. Light sound, or we can say empty mouth letter, right? Empty mouth, I mean that all of the air is removed via my mouth, right? So it becomes an empty mouth letter, and we just simply say ta. But for the second one, when we are articulating that, some of the air gets accumulated in our mouth. We do that intentionally. Why? So that, we make a heavy sound. Paw, paw. Okay, whenever in Arabic, whenever we say that certain letter is a light letter, for that our tongue is in a resting position, right? Our tongue is in a resting position and we just push the air out of our mouth. And that is why we say this is a light letter. But whenever a letter is is heavy in Arabic, what we do, we raise the back part of our tongue, right? We raise the back part of our tongue to make that letter sound heavy. Okay, so for the first letter ta, the tongue is in resting position and we make this light sound and say ta. But for the second letter, we do two things, okay, to differentiate that with the first letter. For the second letter, the tip of the tongue, we touch that to the root of our upper front two teeth with strength. The first point is with strength, okay? And the second thing we do is that we raise the back part of our tongue, and because of that some of the air gets accumulated in our mouth as well, and that is how the second letter becomes heavy. Okay, let me just say, articulate both of these one more time. The first one is ta, ta, whereas the second one is paw, paw, paw. You will hear that it is a more heavy sound, right? Some of the air is in my mouth, the back part of my tongue is getting raised, right, towards the palate. And we say paw, ta and paw. This is the difference between these two letters, okay? Let's take examples as well. The first example here is written here, which is kataba, ta. The ta sound here is in the middle. Kataba, kataba. Let's take the example of second alphabet now, which is ba sa pa. The sound here is at the end. Ba sa pa, ba sa pa. A heavy pa sound. First one here is kataba, light sound. The second one is a heavy ba sa pa, pa. Okay, I cannot say ba sa ta, ta, right? I cannot make this empty mouth sound because we have a paw here. So we will make full mouth sound like ba sa paw, ba sa paw. Okay, so that is the difference between these two. Okay, so who is going to participate now? Once you practice those individually, and then you can come to this second stage of practicing with the similar sounding letters, right? So then you can practice these pairs together as well. The first again point is that you practice them individually first. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so this pair actually it's again a very different sound, but with regards to their articulation, but sometimes we just mix these sounds as well. So let me just tell you the difference of these two. First of all comes the articulation of these two. The articulation of these two letters is altogether different. Okay, so why I have mentioned this pair in the category of similar sounding alphabets, right? There is a reason for that. Okay, in reality this comes from a totally different position and this comes from a totally different articulation point. The first alphabet, which is the dal alphabet, sisters, it comes That is, you're already familiar with that sound. Why you are familiar with that sound is that, you know, the way we say THE in English, the, or this in English, right? You are already familiar with the starting sound here of the, that is the sound which is of the dal letter here, okay? The sound, the TH sound in these two words here. The, very normal, very simple sound. The articulation of the second alphabet is actually that you take the tip of your, sorry, the second letter name is bod, bod. So what happens for bod letter is that you take the sides of the back part of your tongue, right? You can either take one side, right? Or you can take both of the sides of the back part of your tongue and you touch those with your upper molar wisdom teeth, okay? And you make a sound like bo, bo, right? The name of the letter is bod, bod. The first one is dal alphabet, which makes a sound like the. When we place a fatha on top of it, it will be the. Very simple. The. But for the second one, you will have to, use your back part of the tongue as well, and you say bo, bo. What you will notice, in their sound is that the first alphabet is a light alphabet and the second alphabet is a heavy alphabet. Okay, the first difference was in their articulation point. The second difference is in their quality as well. That the first one is a light one and the second one is a heavy alphabet. Okay, so why we think that their sound is a similar is because of the reason that mostly people mispronounce the sound of this second alphabet. They do not they do not do mistake in the first alphabet. The mistake is actually in their second alphabet of bod here, right? The mistake can be because of the reason that their articulation, they don't know the proper articulation point of the bod, or it comes because of the reason that they are not making it heavy, right? How we make some letter heavy. I just mentioned in the previous pair as well that any letter, if we want to make that letter sound heavy, we raise the back part of our tongue, right? So when sisters are not putting effort in their back part of the tongue, when they're not raising that properly, or maybe they are struggling as well, so that is when that becomes the dal sound, even if the articulation is very different. Okay, so that is how they might struggle with these. Let's take example for now. The example for the first alphabet is the, ra, sa, the, ra, sa. The starting sound is of the dal letter. We say the, ra, sa, the, ra, sa. Let's take the example for the second alphabet, which is bo, bo, ra, sa, bo, ra, sa. Right? The starting sound is like bo, bo, ra, sa. The first sound is like da, like empty mouth sound. Da, ra, sa, da, ra, sa. The second one is a full mouth, heavy sound. Bo, bo, ra, sa. Let's take another example of this word here, which is abara. Qaf, dal letter, and ra letter. A, da, ra. A, da, ra. A, da, ra. Now let's take example of the bod letter here. Let's take this example, which is wada'a, wada'a. We cannot say wada'a. We cannot make it light, otherwise it will become dal. So we will make this heavy and say wada'a, wada'a, like this. Okay, so the first alphabet here is a light alphabet, which is dal. The second is a heavy alphabet, which is bod, bo. Okay, so who is going to try this one now? Yes, for the first one, just remember this, and for the second one, sister, we can write it like this: law. Just for you, sister. Otherwise, this is not a proper way to write it, but I will just say this. Just you can try to say these words here. Like for the first one, you can say THA, the. For the second one, what you can do, sister, you can attach the AW sound at the end. The way we say aw in English, right? When we are just giving this expression of aw. So we can attach that sound at the end and say law, law. The aw sound is there at the end, kind of. For the first one, that is more like the sound, the. And for the second one, aw sound is at the end, law. Okay, try one more time, sister. Okay, so these are inshallah easy. This is going to be very easy, inshallah. So these two, letters, the first one here is sa, sa alphabet. The articulation of this first one is that we take the tip of our tongue. Okay, we take the tip of our tongue and we touch that with the edges of our upper front two teeth, or we can say the tip of our upper front two teeth, or we can say the edges of our upper front two teeth, right? So we make the sound like the, the. To create a difference between this pair, you are supposed to just focus on the articulation point, because the articulation point is different. For the first point, for first one, take the tip of your tongue and touch that with the edges or tip of your upper front two teeth and make a sound like sa, sa. But for the second one, sisters, you can remember that the second one is just like the S of English, like S alphabet, right? So we have that whistle sound in it as well. The articulation for that is that the tip of our tongue, it touches the back part of our upper front two teeth, like the upper as well as the lower front two teeth, right? Tip of the tongue, it touches the back side of our upper front two teeth as well as the lower front two teeth. Okay, and that is how we say the S sound in English as well. There is this whistle in it as well, and we say the, the. We make this whistle sound intentionally in the second one. In the first alphabet, we avoid that whistle sound, whereas in the second one, we intentionally make that whistle sound. So that is the major difference between the sound of these two. The first one is sa, sa. The second one is sa, sa, sa. Okay, I'm not sure if you are able to hear the difference via Zoom or not. Let's take the example of the words given here as well. Okay, so the first word here is thamara. We have a tha here, ma and ra in this word. Thamara, thamara. Let's take the example here of seen now, which is sa, ma, a, sa. Sa with whistle in it. Sama'a. Sama'a. Okay, let's take another example of this word here, which is la, ba, and tha. La, ba, tha. Let's take the example of this one here, which is la, ma, sa with whistle in it. La masa. Okay, simply, sisters, this is actually the S of English, but this is not the S of English because the articulation is different. So, as soon as you will just create a difference in the articulation, the sound will automatically be different. Okay, yes, sister. Yes, sister, who is going to be the first one now? Okay, let's move on to the next pair for today, which is now seen alphabet that we have already discussed, right? Seen is the alphabet which is like the S of English, which has this whistle sound in it, right? Now we have a difference, with this one as well. Why did we are looking at the difference now? Because their articulation point is exactly the same. The first alphabet here is seen, and the second one here is sad. They are articulated from the exact same point. And what is the articulation point? We take the tip of our tongue and we touch that with the back side of our upper front two teeth as well as the lower front two teeth, right? We touch that at that part. So that is how we say both of these letters. seen letter and sawed letter. Now, what is the difference then? I told you that whenever two letters have the same exact, the exact same articulation point, then we have a difference in their quality. Okay, so here is the same case. The first letter is a light letter and the second letter is a heavy letter. And I've already mentioned that whenever we make any letter heavy in Arabic, we do the same mechanism. We do the same procedure that we raise the back part of our tongue. And what that does is that, that like we kind of, keep some of the air in our mouth then. And, we just remove some of it out of our mouth, but some of it is in there, in our mouth as well. And our mouth becomes, yes, our mouth becomes kind of full, and that makes the sound heavy. So the first letter is very simple. We say s sound, s, right? The whistle sound. But for the sawed letter, we will say saw, saw, saw. A heavy sound, right? Just let me give you the example of, English word here, which is like I saw that. Saw, kind of similar, right? I gave you the example earlier of this word as well. Muscular, for example, mouse. The S sound that you hear, mouse, muscular, muscular, okay? Or the good example can be saw. So if we place a fatha on this letter, second letter, that will be saw. The first one is simply sa, sa. But the second one is saw, saw. Let's take the example of this word here, sisters. This is sa, ma, and a. Sama'a. Now let's take the example of second one here, which is so, ba, ra. So, ba, ra. The first one is sa, sama'a. The second one is so, so, ba, ra. Like this. Let's take another example, which is like this. At the start, we hear this sound like asma'a, like as, right? As, asma'a. For the second one, we have example like this. Ashabu, aus, ashabu. Okay, the first one is sa. The second one is so, like this. Okay, so yes, sisters, who is going to say this now? Okay, so the first alphabet here is now kaf, which is like the K of English, right? K, ka sound. Okay, so the second alphabet here is of, of. We're not familiar with the second alphabet, okay? Of. Okay, so what is the difference? The difference is in actually their articulation points, right? Their articulation points are different, but they are actually close as well. So the first alphabet, kaf, is actually articulated when the back part of our tongue, it touches the soft as well as our hard palate above. Okay, soft as well as the hard palate, right? What touches? The back part of the tongue, right? The back part of the tongue, it touches our soft palate as well as the hard palate. But the second one, right, for that, the back part of the tongue only touches the soft palate. Okay, for the first one, we'll make use of the soft as well as the hard palate. But for the second one, only soft palate is used, and we touch the back part of the tongue to that soft palate with strength. Okay, so that is what creates the difference. So let's take the first one. If we place a fatha on the first alphabet of kaf, the sound will be like ka, ka. Like we say, kite in English or something like that. Ka, ka, like that. For the second alphabet, if we place a fatha on top of it, that will make a sound like oh, oh. So what is the difference? With the sound, you can hear that the first alphabet is actually a light alphabet as well, right? The first one is a light alphabet. Even though the articulation is different in these two, there is another difference that the first is a light alphabet and the second one is a heavy alphabet. So let's, let me just give you an example, which is like, let's take this example. Ak, I have placed a hamza before this kaf alphabet now, and I'm saying ak, ak. Let's take, let's place a hamza before the second alphabet, which is aq, aq, which becomes a heavy sound, right? Aq. The first one is ak, ak. The second one is aq. Okay, let's take another example, which is, this of this word, kana, kana. Let's take example for the second alphabet now, which is qala, qa, qa. This is the same thing I would like to mention that, in in light alphabets, you will hear, this sound at the end. K, A, the sound at the end. Ka, ka. But in heavy alphabets, you will always hear this AW sound at the end, like this. Sorry, let me just write the correct way, Q at the start, because this sound is heavy. So we say aw. The aw sound is at the end. Aw. The first one is ka, ka, empty mouth sound. The second one is a heavy sound, aw, aw, like that. Okay, so the first one is kaf, and the second one is off, off. The sound, let me just make a proper sound for the second alphabet. What you will hear from that is, let me just repeat the sound, which is qa, 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 qa. Can you hear this sound? So that is what we are looking for as well, inshallah. Okay, so let's move on just quickly to the into this second last, I think, for today. This is actually not a pair, but these three alphabets here. Okay, so what is the difference between these three? They all have a dot on top of them. That is the similarity in them. You're not supposed to confuse these because of their shapes and the dot. So the first alphabet here, sisters, is actually, just like the English Z of English. Okay, Z alphabet, which has this buzzing sound or when we say zebra, right? Zebra or whatever. So the sound is there, which has this buzzing sound, this vibration in that. The, the. Also, you might be able to hear some, whistle sound in it as well. The. Okay, I'm just making this, vibration or buzzing sound intentionally so that you get this point. The, the. Okay, so that is the first alphabet, which has a, totally different articulation point with the next two alphabets that we will cover. Okay, let's move on to the next two alphabets. Write this pair here. Okay, so what happens, sisters, is that for these two alphabets, their articulation point is exactly the same. What is the articulation point now? We take the tip of our tongue and we touch that to the tip of our upper front two teeth, right? The edges of our upper front two teeth. Take the tip of your tongue and touch that with the edges of your upper front two teeth, and you will make this soft kind of sound, right? Soft. There will not be, this buzzing sound much. We will say, for example, let's, put a fatha on both of these. So the first one here will be the. I'm not articulating this, the way we do with the Z alphabet of English. Okay, we're not supposed to use that articulation point. We will say the. We will make use of the tip of our tongue and we touch that with the tip of our or the edges of our upper front two teeth. And we say the. This is a dal alphabet, right? The second one, the articulation is exactly the same, but this is the heavy alphabet, right? The second one is a heavy, and the first one here is actually light. Okay, so what do we do when we want to make any alphabet heavy? Who is going to tell me this thing? What are we supposed to do when we make any alphabet heavy, sisters? Whenever we want to make any alphabet heavy in Arabic, we raise the back part of our tongue. Okay, so our tongue, just the way we divide our throat into three parts with regards to the articulation, I told you about in the starting sessions that we have a upper portion of our throat, and then we have a middle portion, and then we have a lower portion. So same thing, we divide the tongue into three portions as well. The first is the tip of our tongue. Then we have the middle portion of our tongue. And then we have a back portion, the thick portion, right? The end portion of our tongue, which is near to our throat. So what do? We raise that towards the our palate, right? We raise that towards our palate, and that is how we can make any letter sound heavy. So let me just say this one, okay? So we have this dal alphabet here, right? Again, I'm just mentioning this one here. This is dal alphabet. If you place a fatha on top of it, that will be like the. This is a light letter. This is empty mouth letter, right? So we say the. The second one is actually, from the same articulation point, but it is actually a heavy letter. And I mentioned that how we are supposed to make this heavy is that we raise the back part of our tongue. So we say wa, wa. The first one here is, this one here. The first one here is the. The second one here is wa. Okay, I hope you can hear the difference. The first from this pair is the, which is light. The second is wa, the and wa, the and wa. Okay, so this is the difference. One is light, one is heavy. How the second one is heavy? We raise the back part of the tongue towards the palate, and our mouth kind of gets full with air, and the sound of the letter becomes heavy. Okay, now moving on to the last one for today, inshallah. Okay, sisters. This is, actually there are actually very different alphabets, but I'm just going to mention this for the sake of, clarity, that the first alphabet here is Wa alphabet that we just discussed, which is a heavy alphabet, right? And the second alphabet is again a heavy alphabet. So maybe that is the reason that people struggle with their sounds. Both of these alphabets are heavy alphabets. The first is articulated from a different point, and the second one is articulated from a different point. For the first one, we take the tip of our tongue and we touch that to the tip of our upper front two teeth. Okay, tip of the tongue, we touch that to the tip of our upper front two teeth, and we make a heavy sound and say wa, wa. Okay, so I have mentioned this point for this alphabet that the sound we make is actually, a bit near to the Z sound. Okay, the Z sound. Like not exactly the same, obviously, but I'm just telling you for the sake of, just understanding that the sound of this alphabet is a little closer to the Z of English in terms of, sound, not in terms of articulation. Now, moving on to the articulation of the second alphabet, sister, is that we take the back side of the back part of the tongue, or both of the sides of the back part of the tongue, and we touch that to the upper molar wisdom teeth. Okay, so what is used for the second alphabet is that the back part of the tongue is used, and we touch that to the upper molar wisdom teeth as well. Okay, for the first alphabet, our front part of the tongue is used and front teeth are used. Okay, so front part of the tongue and front two teeth are used for the first alphabet. For the second alphabet, the back part of the tongue is used, and the back teeth are used, the wisdom teeth are used. So this is exactly, like the opposite, and they are totally opposite. The sound of second alphabet is actually a bit near to the th sound of the word in English or this word in English. Okay, a bit more similar. So you can, understand the difference. The first one is a bit more closer to the z sound, right? And the second one is a bit more closer to the th sound, the sound. Let me just say these two words with a fatha on top of them. When the first alphabet will have a fatha, we will make a sound like wa, wa, right? Wa. And when second alphabet, we will place a fatha on top of it, that will be like ba, ba, ba. Okay? For the first one, wa, wa. For the second one, ba. What will happen, sisters, is that you will, when you will just focus on the articulation points, inshallah, you will be able to create this difference in both of their sounds. Okay, so is this difference clear, sisters? This is the last pair of today, inshallah. Is the difference clear for now? Okay, sister. What I said, sister, is that both of these two alphabets, they have totally opposite, very different articulation points. The first alphabet, Sister Vanessa, for the first alphabet, we use the tip of our tongue, okay? And we touch that tip of our tongue to the upper, tip of our upper front teeth, okay? Just take the tip of your tongue and touch that with the tip of your upper front two teeth and say, wa, wa, okay? So for the first alphabet, for now, what we remember is that the front part of the tongue is used and our front two teeth are used. Front, right? For the second alphabet, the articulation is totally different. For the second alphabet, we do not use the front part of our tongue. Rather, the back part of the tongue is used. Okay? The back part of the tongue is used and we touch that back part of our tongue, like the sides of the back part of our tongue, to our upper molar wisdom teeth, not the front teeth. Okay? So back part of the tongue is used and the back teeth are used, like the wisdom tooths are used. Let me just give you an example quickly. This is like wa alphabet at the start, and then we have lam, and then we have meme. We say it like wa la ma, wa la ma. Okay, and let's take the example for second one, which is bo ro ba, boraba, boraba. What I mentioned here with regards to this point, that the sound of the first alphabet is a bit closer to the way we say Z in English. Okay, this makes a more close sound to the Z of English. Obviously, not the Z sound. Okay, I'm again repeating. I'm just mentioning for the sake of clarity that it is more near to the Z sound, whereas the sound of the second alphabet of Bod is a bit more near to the TH sound of English, the way we say the in English or this in English. Okay, so that is a bit more closer to the TH sound. So I am mentioning these points so that you get clear with regards to the difference in the sound of these two alphabets. One is a bit more clear to the Z sound, but the second one is a bit more near to the TH sound of English.